cost impact on companies. It also factors in technology available to the industry. Dr. Koh was addressing MPs' concerns about how the law could hit companies' bottom lines and Singapore's competitiveness. Claudia Lim reports.
These wastewater treatment plants and cooling towers have helped HOYA Electronics boost its water recycling rate to 75% this year. It's one of the highest in the semiconductor industry.
Before that, the rejected water, after the treatment, we will discharge the water into the public sewer. And now, for all those rejected water, we will go through this water recycling system to actually recycle and reuse the water for our production and our operation needs.
The maker of computer, television and smartphone parts says it has saved 2.5 times more water compared to nearly a decade ago. Their efforts come ahead of a law starting next year, making it mandatory for water-intensive companies in the electronic and biomedical industries to recycle certain waste streams. The law will also require wafer fabrication plants which hit a recycling rate of at least 50%. It's all in the nation's bid for better water efficiency and sustainable growth in non-domestic water demand.
The wafer fabrication, electronics and biomedical industries fulfill both these criteria of having high water demand and producing water streams with high potential for recycling. However, we also recognize that they each use water differently and processes can differ from one facility to another.
The requirements will apply to new projects and the expansion of existing plants, but several MPs raised concerns about the impact this could have on individual companies and their industries.
We must be mindful of the costs associated with meeting these requirements. In particular, whether having compulsory water recycling will drive up costs of production and will make businesses in Singapore less competitive.
Will the new water efficiency requirements result in additional cost burdens for these MNCs?
Can SMS also share whether the water efficiency requirements take into account the present technology that is available to maintain water efficiency?
In response, Mr. Koh says National Water Agency PUB factored in the need to balance the recycling rate with economic and technological viability.
Too low a mandatory recycling rate means that we do not maximize the opportunity to achieve a more sustainable water demand growth. Too high a recycling rate may be economically prohibitive for several companies, which will end up eroding Singapore's competitiveness. We are mindful of potentially higher operational costs and land constraints that become especially salient when the recycling rate goes beyond 50%. As companies will have to adopt more advanced water treatment technologies.
To help companies invest their tech to raise water recycling rates, PUB will provide funding and technical support. It recently raised the caps for its Water Efficiency Fund and the Industrial Water Solutions Demonstration Fund from $1 million and $4 million respectively to $5 million each.
New water taxes are coming for the likes of large golf courses, country clubs and desalination plants in Singapore. Come 2025, the National Water Agency will impose a waterborne tax and a conservation tax on private water suppliers and harvesters that have tanks that can hold more than 350 cubic meters of water. That is enough to fill about 26,000 pails. These private water suppliers, or PWS, harvest rainwater or desalinate seawater. The waterborne tax will be imposed for the water that they use and they sell. The water conservation tax, however, will only apply to water supplied for sale by private desalination plants. Senior Minister of State for Sustainability and Environment, Koh Poh Koon, says it's about ensuring water security and sustainable growth in the country's private water supply.
PWS provide water that is fit for purpose, which allows for the more efficient use of water. Nonetheless, to ensure overall water resilience, PUB is still expected to maintain sufficient reserve capacity and be ready to ramp up water production. Furthermore, PUB must develop and maintain sufficient capacity in our sewer network and water reclamation plants to collect and treat used water from PWS and their customers. So on this basis, the same principles of water conservation and the same contribution towards the national used water system should apply to PWS, just like how they apply to all other water users. we need to ensure that the growth of the private supply of water remains sustainable.
Dr. Koh also sought to allay MPs' concerns about the impact this would have on the sector and on customers, and what the agency is doing to avoid the perils that plagued Singapore's open electricity market. It says the taxes would be gradually phased in, and the intent is to keep the sector small. It currently supplies about 1% of the total water demand in Singapore.
When the impositions of the water bond tax, WBT and WCT, have an adverse impact on PWS, discouraging them from the provisions of their services.
We acknowledge that the charges will add to the PWS's operating costs. To address Mr. Gan's concerns and help PWS cope with the transition, PUB will only implement the charges in early 2025 instead of immediately, and adopt a phased approach to implement the charges.
How does PUB plan to make sure that by allowing more PWS, we ensure that it does not go the way of the open electricity market, where a number of small companies could not sustain their operations and customers were affected?
Keeping private water supply small would be an important safeguard and manages the enterprise risk for our water system as a whole. If the PWS sector were to grow multifold, the PWS sector would place significantly more risk on our water system, and PUB would then need to provision for and invest in more capacity to ramp up production in case of any disruption faced by the PWS.